Coming up on this episode of Cade Friends. Our guest this week, author Jordan Ballard. People can order Hellhound's Delight.
It is interactive fiction. It's this young woman, and she went to a party with her friends on Halloween night, and some really creepy stuff happens. There's like 12 different endings. Some are gory, some are not so gory.
Kate and I might have gotten a gory one.
It's really easy to find the gory endings. I will say I wrote it, and I sometimes still can't get the good endings. So.
Hello and welcome to Cade Friends. I am joined with my co-host Alex Clare and our guest this week, Jordan Ballard. You're an author, a writer, and all the other synonyms teller of stories, and also a friend of ours from college. Yes, we all went to. Yeah, sometimes we all went to college together. You're not just some rando that we picked off the street.
Not today, anyway.
No, we have a very, I think we have a fun getting to know story from you and I getting to know each other, and then Cade getting brought into the loop.
Are we jumping into that?
What else would you? Also, for those of you at home, Lexi was not mugged. If you want to know the context of that, subscribe to patreon.com/ktomas, and you'll fully understand that joke.
But before we go into all of our history with Jordan, Jordan is an author and writer, and support Jordan there on all those platforms. JC Ballard, JC Writes, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do we know Jordan?
So I believe it was my sophomore year of college, and I was part of some campus groups that met near the freshman dorms.
What campus groups?
Oh, the one like Christians in Action, and
you were in Christians in Action.
I was in the CIA.
Wow.
And so
I guess I didn't realize that was what you were a part of that.
Yeah.
Maybe I knew that at some point.
Really, I joined it just for like the because like there was. I played it for I went there for the people and the games and stuff, because like they often they'll play games for an hour, do some snacks, and then they'll do their
So you were a Christian in Action for the games.
They did have good snacks.
They had good snacks. Yeah, I was in it for the people and the snacks.
Not the Lord.
That wasn't my main priority in the CIA now.
Okay.
And so
is it anyone's in the CIA?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few people that were in it, who were, and I have mad respect to them.
They were. Let's just be clear here. The CIA, the Christians in Action, they were a lot. They were extra. They were,
but they were nice. They were
nice. Yeah, there's a lot of good. There were. I think almost all of the best ones left the program. So.
Okay, I'm trying to not make enemies here, Kate.
That is my statement. Not Alex.
I had friends
who does not speak for us.
I had friends who had stayed in it throughout, and so,
really?
Yeah, and so
I know very little about the organization outside of I would sit there alone eating my dinner, and then they would come over there and bother me about wanting to talk to me in some sort of way, and it's like
They wanted to talk to you about your car's extended warranty.
I couldn't have a private, I'm here, or I'd be with somebody and they would they butt into your conversations and tell you about, hey, you should join this organization or whatever. And they're just so bright.
Yeah, they probably could have stood at the doors and be like, "Hey, join us," instead of bothering. Yeah. But they put on Humans versus Zombies, which was very popular at the campus.
That is
so that was a big Nerf war that would happen.
They did the pancakes too.
They did
during finals week.
Was that them, or was that the church across the street?
There's some sort of organization that's tied into it. Was it? I don't know.
There was.
They seem like the most logical.
I actually think that might have been a different group.
But it was some sort of was that BLM or whatever that's called? Was that Black Lives Matter?
I can say for certainty it was not BLM.
Black lives do matter, but they did not host the pancake thing.
Yeah,
No, the one with the Baptist, that organization.
Yeah, it was definitely a Baptist group.
It's B something something.
But it was not BLM. Unfortunately, our campus didn't have a BLM. But they do matter.
Yeah. So go back to your story of how you met Jordan.
So I was part of that, and we played games and stuff. And there was one time we were cooking something in the dorm room kitchen. And we were doing stuff in the kitchen, getting stuff ready, and out pops this group of people, one of which was Jordan. And they're cooking in the kitchen as well. And I just start talking with them because I think I'm just looking for an excuse to like get out of what I'm supposed to do. Like I said, I was in it for the people, and here's another group of people, and they're having fun and they're talking.
And we weren't in the CIA.
They weren't in the CIA. And so they're a group, like they were having fun and they were like playing games, I think, while in the kitchen. And I just kind of like sucked in and put myself in. I was like, you guys seem pretty cool. And I just like forcibly joined your group. But you guys let me, and then we started like meeting at like in the dorm room and playing games and stuff. And so that's how I met Jordan, was just forcibly making her accept me as a friend. Much like the CIA may have forced people to join that group. I forced and so then I did end up like kind of moving away from CIA and just hanging out with them because they met like whatever day the CIA met, you guys always met that day, that
Wednesday
time.
Nights.
Was it Wednesday? Mm-hmm. Wednesday nights.
Those were family game night, as we liked to call it.
And I think I would like watch Survivor and then come and join you guys or something. Maybe I don't know. That might have been in my period where I was like not in Survivor, but family game nights was a fun time. And
I of course, I'll tell my story now of how I got involved in this. So I knew. I mean, like you guys were around on campus and different things. There would be similar crossover.
Cade and I are friends.
And then yes, at this point, Alex and I are friends. And I was like, I would always like call Alex and say, "Are you free tonight?" Because he also worked a lot of different nights at the TV station. And so he's like, "Well, I can't." On Wednesday nights, I guess, then because I have this game night. And I'm like, "Oh, well, I come and can I come?" And it was like, I don't know. I would have to ask, and I don't know if they would allow.
So you invited yourself in, but wouldn't invite Cade in
I guess it was
too?
gatekeeping.
Yeah. I don't know if they would. I don't know if this is a thing that you can have other people can like join this. I don't know if they can just come in.
Because this is like before. I mean, did you know Jordan at this time? Or
We bumped into
yeah.
each other. We had classes
were you in
together.
classes by this point?
Yeah. And so that's where it was kind of like like we somewhat knew each other and everything, but yeah. And then I guess you eventually asked, or I don't know exactly how that all resolved itself, but eventually I started going to these game nights and
Probably did not ask.
I might have had to ask myself.
Let's be real here.
Yeah.
Alex probably did not ask.
Yes.
He just told you to come with him one night, and we just didn't question it.
Yeah.
And then Hannah, a friend of the show, she's been on here before as well. She started coming to game nights as well. I don't remember how that one happened.
So game night went through some crazy evolutions. It started with me, my freshman roommate at the time, her boyfriend, and her cousin. And one of David's friends. And then we all just kind of started doing our own things. We got really into our degree programs and started hanging out more with those people. And then the group evolved from the four of us to really more me and you and Abby at the time. And then Hannah joined because they were roommates.
That's
and then
right.
Cade came in and
and it did different things. And then I remember at some point, so I had just joined, and I knew Hannah, and I obviously knew Alex, and then they went off to do Still Magnolias, right? I think that was the one that you guys were on. And Hannah, for people who don't know, so Hannah was acting in Still Magnolias, and Alex was
props.
You did all of the set changes for Stigma. I know.
Yeah,
That is still one of the funniest. So would see still Magnolias. So they had missed a lot of game nights because they were doing this.
Very sad.
And very sad. It was a long process. And my favorite thing, you were the only person moving props for Still Magnolias, and it was almost comedic so the lights, so to see Still Magnolias, they'd do the scene and then the lights would go out and then it would just be Alex just walking across stage by himself, just moving things and then like remembering something else has to be moved and have to, so it's just for an extended amount of time, just Alex on a dark stage, just slowly moving one prop here to here and then leaving the stage and then coming back with another thing.
Or moving it back because he had put it in the spot it wasn't supposed to be in.
There were only like 7 props I had to move from backstage to the front stage. So I had to buy some time. I had to make...
You had to buy time?
Well, yeah, because they were, back there changing or whatever. So, I think my mind was like, well...
Because then you would see Alex stand there on stage and think for a second. I mean, he's at pitch black. It's just silhouette, and it's obviously Alex, but it's...
it was very obviously Alex.
I love that. I just remember that so well.
I remember when Abby and I went that you like damn near fell on your face and we could not for the life of us. And this just tells you a lot about how Alex was during those years. We could not for the life of us figure out if you had actually tripped or if you were just tripping for the sake of making everybody laugh.
I definitely accidentally tripped at that. I don't think I would have. I don't have a lot of shame in front of my friends, but in front of a crowd of people, I would have been far too embarrassed to actually like fake trip.
Yeah. I just feel, I don't know. There was enough people that I feel like you could have had another person help you where you weren't the only person moving props.
They didn't need it. You didn't need another person.
But why did it take so long to move? It's just a few props.
Because I was taking my time. I was just like casual, like, all right, I'm just going to do this and just make sure everything is nice. And
because you were very contemplative with every prop that you did and made sure it was exactly on the spot and then like step back and like, no, that's not exactly right. And then it just seemed very like, yeah, you were really making sure you were like crossing your T's and dotting your I's about every single prop.
Well, I have the time, so I was making sure it was good, I mean.
What this tells me is that you never saw the extended cut of Steel Magnolias with the prop master in it.
Yeah, I really, I gave an interview afterwards, and I really explained everything. If you didn't watch it, Cade, that's on you.
Yeah, so during that time while they were out, Alex was perfecting his movement of props and everything for several weeks. That's whenever I felt like I got to know you more and everything, because I continued going there. I'm like, well, I'm here even though Alex and Hannah's my connection, but it was still that's when I got to know you and the others there, and Abby and everybody there. Yeah, that was. So that was really nice. I enjoyed being part of that and everything, and the games that we played and everything. It was we got to know each other, I think, very well and everything, and had really just great conversations in general. Yeah.
Yeah, we had some very deep conversations during that time without Alex around.
We had some good conversations too. I mean, that's what it eventually like turned into. Just be 3, 4, 5 of us, and instead of playing games, we would just eat and then just sit and talk and just talk about like what's going on in the world. Or
I forgot you would like make dinner sometimes, right?
On occasion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, food is my love language. Let's just be real here. We'll put it out there. The way to my heart is food, and the way that I show people I love them is food. So
yeah.
And so I mean, the family game night it definitely evolved, but it did turn into just we would still play games, but if we didn't have a big enough group, we would just sit and talk for an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours, until you would be like, well, guys, it is midnight and I need you to get out.
My introverted ass is ready to go home.
Yeah.
But it was, it was a nice point of college, and I think I take that part for granted because like, looking back, it's like, it's nice having this group of friends that you meet up with once every week, and I think that's important. If you can get that in college, if you're watching this,
yeah,
come on, Kate, give me the close up. if you're watching this,
I sure hope it's going to go somewhere interesting.
it's beautiful. Cade.
Okay.
If you're watching this and you're in college, find a group of friends and just meet once every week and just try to do that through the rest of your college career because you're going to look back on it fondly.
I'd agree with that. I don't know if it's something about me or the people that I meet, but I have always loved that I have a very eclectic group of friends. No one friend of mine is exactly like the other one. And it's just, I really love that there's something in my life that attracts these different people and that we're able to sit down and have those kinds of deep conversations, or we're able to let loose and have a little bit of fun with board games or do a little bit of both. So I'd agree with you there, Alex.
Yeah.
Was that good enough, Cade?
That was good. Yes. I think what Jordan said was good enough. But you let her there. Yeah. No, that was such a great time. And I just liked how, we were all there, and it was just like, I think that was probably one of the closest things to actually kind of the college experience kind of thing that I had of what you would expect, of just people, hanging out. And it was, like we said, we all had different things. So people would come and go and they'd be here for, this period of time. And then they would, and then they'd have things they had to do. And sometimes people definitely brought people for just the week. So I don't know why Alex was acting like that. We couldn't bring anybody there.
There weren't a lot of people who would pop in like,
Hannah would bring her cool friends or whatever, to it. And
He just wanted to be the special one.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it was so. I don't know how much more there is to say about that, but that was a really good time. And then we would, the four of us with Hannah, we would hang out at various points. And I remember just different. I don't even know the
we spent
reasoning.
a lot of time together.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it was just that we were all in the same degree program, different branches, of course, but we had a lot of the same classes. So it was just.
Well, three of us were radio TV. You were the different one.
Oh yeah, out me like that.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't even know some of those things because I remember very vividly like us being over at the UVB at the little like the game room that they had there for some reason, and it was kind of near when we were at the end of our program, and we just kind of hung out there for some reason. There were just different times, and it was just us. And then I remember, of course, the main one whenever Alex left, which I guess was the last time we were all together.
Yeah, it was right before COVID.
It was right before COVID. Alex was going off to Disney. And so that was
2019. Yeah. Well, we came back and we visited you. We all got together and we ate. You were in your new apartment in Tulsa. And
that not what this
we went
was
to
not?
Goldie's.
But was that not?
I think that would have been.
We might have been a little bit off. It might have been like his first time back since Disney.
Oh, is that right?
That might have been what it was.
I think that's what it would have been because, like, why we were all in college still. What point would we have had? Because I left in May to go to Disney. I don't think we would have all been like, all right, guys, here's our farewell tour. Jordan's still in college, and I don't think that would have. I don't think that would have tracked.
Did Hannah eat at Goldie's?
Yeah, Hannah was with us.
Okay. I knew she was at the apartment, but I didn't know if she had. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I guess you're right. I mean, I guess that was.
I think it would have been early 2020 when I had come back before COVID.
It might have been that time with when our movie was playing at Crashland. Like during that time, you were there at that point, so it would have been that week or something.
Because
it might have been right before the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
2020
was the last time we all got together.
We'll need to fix that.
I know. Cade and I talk about you a lot.
I guess we could have invited Hannah here in retrospect, but oh well. Sorry, Hannah, you didn't get the invite.
we wanted we wanted to have we wanted yours to be because you are doing a lot of your stuff, and
we also felt like we knew we should have had you on earlier. Like, so that was always
we did try, but you were up in Kansas.
I did tell Alex when he asked me, I was like, I was starting to get a little offended that you'd had everyone else on, and he did say, we've tried, your schedule just never lined up. So I guess that is a reasonable that is a reasonable excuse. Still a little offended that it took this long, but apparently there was a good reason.
I do wish we stayed in a little bit better contact though. I have friends in my life where I'm like, because I would obviously see you on Facebook and stuff, but even Facebook is something that I don't know. Once I moved to Ohio, it was just like I have a hard time. I'm like a baby, like I have no object permanence. Is that what it is? If you're
how are you like a baby in this?
I've learned if my friends like aren't there in front of me, I have a hard time of just like sometimes reaching out, and so like I'm very much like I have friends that I like play D&D with, and so I have that thing with them all the time. And so it forces me to kind of stay in and see them. But once I don't have that, so, didn't have that family game night, I moved to Florida, Utah, Ohio. And it's like, I'm meeting all these new people and like, I'm so busy, and it's just like, I didn't have this like constant reminder, and I would always think of you guys, but it's like, okay, now it's 10 PM and, what am I going to do? And so, Cade did really well at, constantly, being very much like, but granted, we were doing a lot of projects together, so kind of forced us to stay together. But, that is something I do wish. I think about it all the time. I'm always like, dang, I really need to reach out to like some of these old friends of mine. And then, maybe I'll shoot a message just to one person and then they don't reply. And I'm like, oh, well, it's all hopeless. So.
It was certainly easier when you were just around and you could just bump into them and say, hey, does this time work? Or were you still planning on doing that? Or, we had a regularly scheduled night in one case. Yeah.
But what I've always appreciated about our friendship, and it's been this way since we met, is that even if there are periods where you and I don't talk, like summers, between school years, we wouldn't really talk a whole lot. It changed a little bit after junior year when we all kind of became a cohesive group, but it's that you and I pick up right where we left off.
Yeah.
Like no time, like it doesn't matter if it's been a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, you and I always pick up right back where we left off. Like, it's just like not a single day has been missed.
Okay. So this is what's been going on in your life, right? Okay. Any other fill in the gaps? All right, great. Anyways. Yeah. I don't know. I love that. I think that like shows a real true friendship is that can there's different types of friendships. There's the friendships where you're talking to the person once a week or, every other week. And then there's the friendships where like, maybe you don't talk as much as you would like, but as soon as you do talk, boom, everything is back to just,
it's the way it always
was.
It's
as if it was 2018 again. It's crazy to think about. 5 years ago.
Oh, don't say that.
That is, I mean,
wait,
it's
no. 6 years ago.
That didn't make it better.
So the joke there is we film these like in bulk, so this isn't going to come out until like next summer.
Yeah.
So everything we have to talk about, we have to be very meta and reference how it's actually different.
Yeah, at this point, I'm sure the audience. I'm sure at this point they love it now. Yeah, it's worked its way back around that they hated it, now they love it again. Yeah. No, it's do we want to talk about your writing now? I don't know if that's
It sounded like you had something really profound you wanted to say about friendship. If you want to come back up with it.
No.
Cade was about to bust out of his shell and say, "You're my friend."
No, yeah, no. I mean,
The name of the podcast wasn't hidden enough.
Yeah, Cade Friends. Yes, no. I like I said, we should have had you on a lot sooner. But no, I appreciated our friendship a lot. I think it was through sort of those game nights in which there were other people there and everything, and then us and everything I think I'd sort of learned the valuableness of having conversations with people and kind of. I mean, it was wide ranging. We would talk about anything, and it was very open, and so I very much appreciated that because I think from before, and I talked about this I think with one of our first ones with maybe was the first episode of this show that that first year at college was very difficult for me because I was in a lot of these honors classes, and none of them I really meshed well with at all. A lot of people, that was the quote unquote family that they found, in college was the honors program. That was not me. I did not gel with really anybody there. And it wasn't until we started taking more of our communications courses, and I got to know Alex more, even though I didn't know him in freshman year. But it wasn't.
We did. We met freshman year in your. I was brought to because your roommate was. So I dated someone in honors. And that person was friends with your roommate, and then we got introduced.
So what happened was, I think, I was said like I wanted to do film and everything, and everyone has to have some sort of, way they boil you down or whatever. And I guess because I wanted to do film, that's what that was. And Alex, I guess, had said he wanted to do acting or whatever and do the film stuff. And so it's a very awkward sort of, hey, this person also does that, and then he gets summoned to my dorm for this.
I remember
out of nowhere, just randomly shows up as he does.
I remember it so vividly because most people.
I hate this story.
Most people have their desk against the wall.
Don't do this.
Like Cade.
Well, see, now I need to hear the story.
So Cade had his. So most people, in those dorms, desk against the wall, but Cade had his pulled out, and so
I don't like my back to open spaces.
Fair.
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And so I just come in and Cade's just sitting there behind his desk. He has his Mac computer, and right here, and he's just like, "Oh, hello," like,
it was like an appointment. It was like, well, like I was told this person's coming here. And he's like, comes out, and I'm sitting behind his desk, and I don't know, it seemed so formal for no reason. It just me sitting in my dorm. Yeah.
I don't remember what we talked. I know we talked about, like, you're like, oh, you want to do like acting or film? Well, I'm a film writer or filmmaker, and just like, oh yeah, I'd love to do anything, and I'm sure we talked about being in the same degree or whatever, but and then I don't know, it just kind of, there wasn't a lot, but like we were in the same groups and stuff, and so I think we just maintained seeing each other. And Cade's memory is probably better than mine, but I'm sure he might remember a little bit more. But I remember that first encounter so vividly.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think we left that of like, well, that was awkward and weird. I don't think that's going to ever turn into anything, but I think it's good to know that someone else is here that's interested or whatever. But that that was freshman year, and he was around because like you said, he dated someone from honors, and we were all on the same floor and everything, and so I knew of Alex and everything that first year, but it just felt like that there wasn't any sort of connection there. So that first year was very sort of isolating in that way, and then sophomore year was really when we started actually having communications courses and started being around people that were actually a lot more like-minded and everything. And then officially getting the invite to actually come to the the thing. That was where I started to sort of value people, the conversations, and just, finally felt like I found the people that I was most like, and that, actually like welcomed me in and everything. And so I do want to say, I sincerely appreciate that, Jordan, and you creating that sort of space there for that, and being, I know it's, you're an introvert, so it's, tough to sort of be, okay, I'm going to have like, a party, or whatever, call it a get together. But I do sincerely appreciate you doing that. And
well, like you said, I'm a writer, and one of my favorite tropes to read, to write, to watch when it's on TV is found family. And I really think that describes what that weekly thing became. And people would come and they'd go and they'd grow into the group and they'd grow out of it. But it was a safe place that we all knew on Wednesday nights we would get to come do this, and we get to be a family. And
I think you were I'd say the rock, because people would come and go, but like you were always there.
I'm a mother hen. What can I say?
Yeah, honestly, you were. You were the mom of the group, and you kind of embraced that too. And so
you would, if Alex was ever out of line, you would always.
You were stern with me at times. Like you really were. You would, but like you did it with a care, and like someone we've talked about before is Kathy, and and Kathy would sometimes get on to me, and you would stick up for me, and be like, Kathy, like, and you would like talk to Kathy, our professor, and be like, or you would talk to me afterwards, or a Vusa, yeah, and you would like discipline our professors almost, and but then you would like I don't want to say coddle me, but you would be like, yeah, that was whack what they did, you know, in a more motherly way. But like, so, you know, I went to
Jordan's classic phrase, that was whack what they did. If I had a nickel for every time that Jordan said that.
But I appreciated it because, you know, I sit here and I'm thinking back and I'm like, you know, you would, you know, stand up for me, or like, you know, if people said something about me and it was a little too mean, you would be like, well, hang on now. You know, I think it's fair that Alex is like this, but I wouldn't, you know, I think, you know, you described me as like a golden retriever, but if someone else did, by God, they better not.
You were my golden retriever.
I was your golden retriever. And so, you know, everyone else, they better have like, you know, a reason for what they're saying. And if it came off too mean, you were there to be like, not today. And so I really appreciated that. You know, I think that, you know, I probably, I appreciate it now. I don't, you know, I'm sure I'm sure I appreciated it then, but like being able to look back on hindsight, I really appreciated it. So thanks.
That's really sweet. I don't even know what to say to that. I'm just really touched.
But just to bring it down, you would also give it back to him at times. Sometimes if a story would come along and you'd be like, well, Alex, actually, you were in the wrong there.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the kind of role I've always played in every friend group is I'm always the mom friend. It's fine. I carry the big purse with the Band-Aids and the granola bars. I'm fine with that. But I'm also I'm the one that calls you to the mat but I'll also be the first person to stand up for you if someone else comes at you. So at least I know where my space is.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
People came and went, but Jordan was forever.
Aw.
Yeah. Okay, now I don't know if that was interesting to everybody, but outside of our friends, I think there was some good nuggets there. And everything.
Take care of your friends, people.
Take care of your
That's the big thing is take care of your friends.
And clipped.
So writing. So you've authored. So right now, we'll say up front, people can order Hellhounds Delight. I guess anywhere.
It's been out for a year now. Almost.
So the ebook has actually been out since 2018. I published it Halloween 2018, but its 5-year anniversary came up, and I finally had enough pages in it to release the print edition.
Oh,
so that was what the big thing this year was the print edition was finally out
last year.
Oh, last year, sorry.
That was the big thing last year.
now, are you working on any other projects, Jordan?
So the project that I'm working on right now is a 3-book romance series. The first one I wrote in November of 2022. Now I'm all screwed up on my years, guys. Thanks.
Good luck.
And I wrote it as part of National Novel Writing Month, and that really kicked off this series, and it was my first foray into the romance genre. And then in November of 2023, I wrote the sequel. So that's really the big project I'm working on right now is that romance series.
So is your plan to release all 3 of them when they're all done? So come next November, maybe you write the 3rd book. And is the plan to release them all 3 as like one big trilogy? Or are you going to like maybe release one and wait a year, release the other? Like what's your kind of plan?
So it really depends. So the way the books come out really depends on how you choose to publish. My first book, Hellhounds Delight, was a self-published book. With this new series that I'm writing, I really want to do traditional publishing. And I'm looking at a couple smaller presses across the states. And for that, really, from the moment you sign the contract till the book comes out is about 9 months.
Oh, wow.
So it'll probably, if I land it with a traditional publisher, it'll probably end up with a staggered release with about 9 months to a year between each book.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. That so I guess we probably should talk about Hellhounds Delight, just a bit of what it is. So the one that's out now, it's a choose your own adventure story.
Interactive fiction.
Oh, sorry.
I have gotten in trouble for
is it because it's not a brand or something?
Calling it a choose your own adventure, so I call it interactive fiction.
Okay,
I don't want anyone here to get in trouble. It's a very scary email.
cease and desist or something, right?
No, it really was.
Oh my
It really was a cease and desist email.
Because it's a brand name? Is that what that is? Okay.
It's a trademark.
Okay. I did not say what you thought I heard.
So what was it? Interactive what?
Interactive fiction.
Interactive fiction. Yeah. I like that better.
Yeah, I like it better too.
Get you in a lot less legal trouble.
Can you trademark like interactive fiction?
Probably not at this
Probably
stage.
not.
So yeah, so the basic premise. I don't know if you want to walk people through that. What's the basic premise of Hellhound's Delight?
So it is, like you said, interactive fiction, and you become the character. It's this young woman who's about 20 years old, and she went to a party with her friends on Halloween night, and some really creepy stuff happens because she wakes up, she's all alone, she doesn't know where her purse is, doesn't know where her friends are, and so your choices end up influencing where she ends up. There's like 12 different endings. Some are gory, some are not so gory.
Kate and I might have gotten a gory one.
It's really easy to find the gory endings. I will say I wrote it, and I sometimes still can't get the good endings. So
That's exciting. Yeah. What has been the response to that?
it's been really positive. The ebook, I was really impressed with how many I sold when the ebook originally released. I went through a pretty serious bout of writer's block that lasted about 2 years.
Yeah.
So I stopped really promoting it. But the reception to the print release was really good. I sold, I checked it the other day. I want to say I sold 30 copies of the print book for the pre-order campaign. I've sold more since the pre-order campaign has ended. So I was really impressed with the reception that it got, especially as a debut self-published novel.
Yeah. I was about to say, self-publishing is, unless you get lucky, like in very few of those books get lucky. It's just like, if you happen to release at the right second and the right person somehow saw it, and then it just like gets put up on the,
It's an uphill battle.
So, but still, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I broke even, and that was the goal, was to sell enough copies to break even on what I spent. And I did that.
There we go. That's awesome. I know that, I kind of compare it to like whenever Cade and I post something, it's like, we're at a point where now it's like, okay, this is where the views we get. It's like, this is the consistency view. And if it, how fast does it get there? And is it a slow climb, and does it go past that? And it's just like, it's exciting to kind of watch, as long as you don't let it envelop you.
And it can.
Yeah.
Especially with the publishing market right now, because it's so saturated from self-publishing. I found it really interesting when they talked about it at a conference I went to. Writers are starting to be, like, even if you sign with one of the big 5 publishers, like Penguin, you're expected to do 90% of your own marketing. If your book is, if you sign with the big 5, they'll do a marketing campaign, but a lot of that effort is on you. So that's been why self-publishing has really exploded, is because publishing houses are starting to expect the same amount of work in your career to promote yourself as you would have to do for self-publishing.
So you might as well at that point self-publish.
Yeah.
And wow.
So what are they giving in that situation? They're just the fact that they'll produce the books and everything. I mean,
their name is a big one. The big publishing houses have more capital to spend, and they have a wider audience and a wider reach. It's really hard for a self-published author to get into a bookstore.
Okay.
So you have an easy in to the bookstores. You have their resources for a premier marketing campaign. So there are benefits to the publishing houses, but they're so hard to get into if you don't have an agent, or if you're just not quite sure what you're doing. So, and a lot of them, a platform is starting to become a requirement for submissions.
Wow.
So
do you, have you reached out to any local bookstores or anything? I know that I had a friend, a friend's father, I should say, who he self-published a book, and and this was where I grew up. And so, and he was fairly known at this local bookstore. And so that, not local bookstore, but a local game store. And so that game store actually like sold copies of his book for him. And, they only had 2 locations. But have you like gone to talk to anyone about like maybe just, hey, I know you only have one store, but a store is better than no store or anything like that?
I've made some initial inquiries with like Deer Clan Books. There's another one in Oklahoma City I can't remember the name of now, but there are a couple smaller bookstores I've reached out to, and Barnes & Noble has actually changed their rules a little bit to make it easier for self-published authors to get on their shelves. So that's probably going to be like a March, April priority for me, is reaching out and seeing what I can do.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's in OKC. It's the Literary Press or something. Literary Press.
That sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when did you say you had writer's block? What was the period of time?
So I want to say that I published Hellhound's Delight, and the reception for it was good. I mostly just published it to prove to myself that I could. Mm-hmm. And then I went through some just personal mental health issues in the start of 2019. I don't know what it is about that year that like the loss of my dad just really hit me. For audience's sake, just to give you some context, I lost my dad to colon cancer in 2016 when I was 17 years old. And I had to keep going because I had my mom and my siblings and I had college to start. In 2019, I just kind of hit this pace where it just was so hard that I could barely do what I had to do. So I didn't want to do what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And by the time I finally felt better and was willing to write again, the words just wouldn't come. So that probably lasted until about 2022.
Now, when you like had this writer's block, were you able to write like, was it like a complete like writer's block, or were you like, because I believe you had a blog at one point, or you were blogging or something. Were you still able to do that, or was it like?
I actually had to step down from the blog because I wasn't able, aside from term papers that we had to write in college, I could not write a word.
Wow.
I could not get words on the page, and it was really hard. I mean, there were multiple times that I would sit down and I'd stare at a blank page for hours and just ask myself, am I really meant to do this? Like, am I really a writer if I can't put words on the page? And then it was really hard. And I mean, I've always wanted to be a writer. I love telling stories. It's such a big part of my identity. And so when I lost that, I've kind of lost myself too. And I remember that what finally brought me out of it is I was driving to work and it was rainy and I was stuck at a stoplight and these words just popped into my head and I had to rush into the office and I wrote them down really quick. And it was just 2 paragraphs from a story I've been thinking about in my head since I was in 7th grade. I wrote 2 paragraphs, and as soon as those paragraphs came out, the words came back. So,
oh, wow.
And then that same year, I wrote the Christmas Lights and Love, that first book.
Those 2 paragraphs, is that to a different?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's for a fantasy series that I've had in my head since probably 7th grade that is probably a 5, 6, 7 year project because fantasy just requires a lot more world building and a lot more devotion to the story that I just don't think I'm in a place to do just yet. But
have you gotten any more from those 2 paragraphs, or like did you get a?
Not for that specific series, but for some other ideas I've had that are more romance based.
But it was at least that cork was popped, and you had the first 2 paragraphs to a fantasy.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So did you during that time? Did you have like ideas, or it was just the execution you didn't know how to handle, or was it just even like no ideas of?
So it was weird. I could not get words on a page. But I had, I've been writing since 5th grade, so I had a bunch of ideas I've come up with and scribbled down over the years. And so when I couldn't get myself to write the project I wanted to write, I would go to one of the ideas I had and I would sit there and I would try and brainstorm, because if I can't write it, at least I can plan it. And I would work on it for a couple hours and I'd read back through it and I'd scrap it because it didn't feel like it was good enough. So what I could write didn't feel like it was good enough, and what I wasn't able to write never made it onto the page. So
yeah, I think a lot of people, I was talking to Andrew, recently, Andrew Nichols, who we all also know, who's been on the show, that, during the time too, I mean, just the pandemic was hard for, a lot of people, a lot of writers and things. And we both struggled for that during the pandemic of just trying to, put pen to paper and, or, as they say. And that I would, during that time I had major writer's block and I have tons of ideas. It was just taking it now to the next step of like actually making it. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult.
Well, and one thing people don't normally suspect from me is that the thing that I am most afraid of is failure. And sometimes that fear of failing becomes so overwhelming that I would just rather not try so I don't have to worry about failing. And that was a really hard mindset to get myself out of.
Absolutely. That was one of the things of why the podcast didn't exist, where everyone would say you should make podcasts, or where they'd hear Alex and I talk and they'd say that. And I would bother him about it. And we'd start, we did record too. And then the pandemic happened and just different things. And it was always, I can't do anything until I'm 100% certain that I do it, because I am scared of failure as well. Like that is one of the biggest things that stops
former
me.
Gifted kid thing. Yeah. I'm convinced that's what it is. It's former gifted kid syndrome.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly what makes Cade and I work well, because Cade is going to do something and he's going to try to make it perfect, but I'm going to sit there and be like, let's just do it. And like, so I'm pushing Cade a lot of the times. It's just like, Cade, let's just do it. Like, I mean, I want to have fun and do the experience. And I don't know. I trust Cade will make it. Cade will, at a minimum, Cade is going to make it good. I don't care if it's perfect or not. And I know Cade does.
I do.
But I know.
This is why you and I click on a lot of levels, is because we are, in many ways, we are the same person.
Yes.
But, I have this faith that it doesn't matter what we do. If Cade is a part of it, at a minimum, it's always going to be good. And for me, as long as we're like enjoying it, I mean, I want us to be creating stuff. I'd rather be creating something and it comes out good than, spend 4 years creating something and it's great and amazing. I'd rather have 4 years of good than 1 year of great. And so, but I think that's like really what helps us, because Cade will come to me with ideas and we'll flesh them out. And then I'm just like, all right, let's do it. And Cade's like, well, hang on, I don't know yet. And it's just like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to keep pestering. And that's how the podcast came about, is that, every time we would talk, we're like, we should record this. And Cade's like, well, I don't know. And, I like to think that, eventually just, you tell someone to do something enough, eventually it'll happen. And so for you though, Jordan, so the writer's block just kind of unblocked itself randomly on a rainy night at a stoplight, which is honestly a perfect setting,
Yeah, if you're a writer, that's the perfect place to find inspiration.
But how did you get over that fear of failure?
So I have many faults, let's be real here, but one of the things that I have had to come to accept about myself, especially as a writer, is that I hold myself to a standard that I would never expect anybody else to live up to. If I struggle a lot in my personal and professional life with this idea that if I'm not perfect, I'm not good enough. And that's because trauma is a bitch, people. Like, trauma is a bitch. And, we all come out of it with scars, and that's unfortunately a scar that I've picked up over the years, is this idea that if I'm not perfect, I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I've really had to work on myself since I found that inspiration again, with this idea that I am good enough whether I'm perfect or not. Mm-hmm. And writing, I don't know if you feel the same way, but creativity is a muscle. And it's hard if you haven't been working that muscle for very long to get back into it.
Yeah.
And part of it is just, I make sure I write at least 100 words a day. Doesn't matter if they're good, doesn't matter if they're bad. I write them, and if they never see the light of day, that's fine, because at least I stretched that muscle today.
That's awesome.
And you do post a lot about like your goals, and like I see that on your page of like your word count goals and how you're completing them, and you know where you're at in this journey, and that's interesting.
I love the accountability. The reason I do the novel writing in November is a part of National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, where around the world people hold themselves to complete a novel that's at least 50,000 words in a month. And you know, people really responded to that when I did it last year, especially because I posted about the writer's block. And so I had a lot of people rooting for me that got really invested in the success story that I went from not being able to write anything to writing upwards of 2,000 words a day.
Just for a reference, how big of a book is 50,000 words? Because that sounds like a lot, but is that like, you know, in the grand scheme of things, is that like a 30 chapter book, or is it like, you know, Cade has some, you know, he has some books over there, some like how
These
big?
are all movies.
Those are all movies. Yeah, never mind. Like, but
Is
how
it
big?
roughly a School of Rock?
Yeah.
So it depends on formatting, obviously, but when I reformatted the manuscript to normal trade size, it's about 200 pages.
200 pages. Okay.
Think 200 pages, 6x9, like normal book size. So.
Okay. That's a good amount. That's a good amount.
And that's obviously different genres have different standards. If you're a fantasy writer, your word count is really closer to 100,000.
Yeah.
But if you're a romance writer, which is one of the genres I write, your word count's usually somewhere between 40 and 60. So 50 is a starting point if your genre is one that has a higher word count expectation. But for some of the other genres like romance, that's dead on. If you get it, then you're right where you're supposed to be.
Okay. That's really good to know. So as soon as you said, you know, you're kind of working on a fantasy, I love fantasy books. So as soon as, you know, I will be first in line for a signed copy of J.C. Ballard fantasy books.
If it ever gets written.
You had mentioned that even when we were in college, like some ideas that you were having for fantasy. Is that still like the same idea that you've been working with?
So ideas come and go.
Yeah.
Some are winners, some are not. But I don't know what it is about this fantasy series that has stuck with me since I had the initial idea in 7th grade. And I'm a little hesitant to write it now because it does involve different multiple universes in one world, and that's a really big thing right now. Marvel is really into the multiverse right now. DC is really into the multiverse, so it's one of those things where I think I need to wait for that to kind of pull back a little bit, but it's something that's stuck with me for so long, so it's probably the same idea.
Now, is your fantasy, you know, is it like dragons and magic, or like, you know, or like elves and men, or, you know, can you share any of that?
So dragons and magic.
Perfect.
Yep.
It's probably going to end up being young adult. I mean, those are my favorite genres to read. I love the Percy Jackson series. I love the Levin Thump series. If you guys don't know what that is, go read it. It's a really, really good book series. Very smartly written too. But I
was a Hunger Games fan.
I love dystopian. Can't write it to save my life.
So
but
if it's written well, like dystopian, is really fun.
dystopian, to write it, for me, it's the hardest thing to write, because if you don't have something to say, then it's not worth writing. That's why the Hunger Games did well in a way that Divergent didn't. I mean, Hunger Games, her message was clear. What she was rallying against was so clear, whereas Divergent was, let's boil this down to the bare bones and make it as perfect for the masses as you can.
Yeah,
I'm a big Susan Collins fan.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, yeah, and what she was like, and then kind of it evolved as it went along. I mean, it ended up sort of being about like, even like, you know, revolutions turn into they will become sort of as evil as like the people that they overthrew, like, and that's repeated throughout, history and everything. So yeah, I mean, it had a lot of interest, a lot of interesting nuggets to say along the way. And I don't know, I feel like there are people of a certain age that will, I don't know, discount Hunger Games, kind of throw it away. That's like, like, oh, it's just, Battle Royale, or it's all these other things that are like, it's like, no, but what it's saying is interesting. Like, it's taking all of these different ideas and it's still making it sense through a young adult lens. Like, I mean,
Can you explain it in Fortnite terms?
Well,
no, I don't. I mean, older people. Like, I think the people were of older age were kind of saying that.
Explain it like Rambo.
Well, and part of the problem with the Hunger Games is that one of the core messages and one of the core themes is about the way that the media treats things. Like, the Hunger Games is horrible. The fact that they turn it into a pageant when they're sending 12, 13, 14-year-olds off to kill each other, that's gruesome. And it's one of those books. I love the books. I love the movies. But it's one of those rare series that I don't think should have been turned into a movie, because the media campaign that you see was all about the love triangle. And because the actors were older, you didn't really get the grit and the depth of the fact that Katniss was 16. Oh, yeah. Jennifer Lawrence did not look 16. Josh Hutcherson also did not look 16. So you lose a lot of that. And it's one of those series that I think should have just stayed on the page. Because the movies turned into exactly what I feel Suzanne Collins was trying to warn us about.
Did you ever read, just because this is something Cade and I were both big fans of, Haddocks, of like the Shadow Children or anything? Did you ever read them?
I think I read the first one. I don't think I've ever finished the series.
It's, from what I remember, I mean, because she is someone that, like, Cade and I both, like, deeply enjoy. Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret Peterson Haddocks. Yeah, just a lot of her books. She wrote a lot of young adult books, and yeah, I grew up reading a lot of her stuff. Was the Hidden was the other one that she did.
It was the time traveling.
Yeah, found. Yeah, all of those different. Yeah, those ones. But yeah, she had a few different ones.
I like young adult books, and that's why the ones I read now, I like young adult books that don't talk down to the people that they're writing to, and that they have something to say.
Is it okay for 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old people to read these young adult books, these,
Absolutely.
books? Because that's something that I've personally, I walked into like a Barnes and Noble, and like, I loved reading these books, and I read them in high school and college, and I'm like, they're really well written a lot of the time. And I go by and I'm like, oh, that looks good. But then it's like young adults. And I'm like, oh God, is it weird? Like 14-year-olds are reading this. Is it going to be weird if I like grab it and read it as well?
I don't think so. As both a writer and a reader, for me, reading is something that I've always loved. It's always been my comfort place, my escape. And I honestly think reading really is fundamental. Like, everyone should read. I don't care if you're reading children's books, young adult books, whatever genre. I think people just need to read. And I honestly don't care if I write a book that's aimed for 16-year-olds and someone who's 90 picks it up and loves it. That's a win in my book, because they found something that they connected with. So I think books are for everyone, regardless of what age they're marketed to. Go buy that book, Alex.
And I mean, that thing brings up an interesting sort of. So one of my favorite movies we watched last season on Double Feature Movie Club was called Young Adult. It was about Charlize Theron plays a young adult writer, and it's Diablo Cody wrote it, and she of course wrote Juno and wrote other things, and it's really about her sort of asking the question, because I guess what caused this movie to happen is like she was on some panel and someone asked her, why are you so interested in like this young adult, genre? And so then she had never really thought of that herself. And that movie was her sort of exploring why perhaps is the reason that she is interested in that genre. And I thought I'd ask the question to you. Why is that a genre that you're interested in?
So I am cursed with being older than my years. And part of the problem with being older than your years is that you consume a lot of media that you feel fits your maturity level. But when you go to have those hard conversations with the people you connect with who are older than you don't know what you're talking about. You're being talked down to. It's just, if you're under the age of 18, regardless of how well read, well researched you are, your point has less merit. And that always bothered me when I was growing up. It bothers me when I see it now. And part of why I like young adult and why I like to write it and why I like to read it is because those authors treat their readers with respect. They're looking at this person, this teenager, and saying, you're right. This worldview that you have is valid. You know what you're talking about. And your beliefs and your morals and your feelings are just as valid as mine at however old I am. I like genres that don't talk down to their readers.
Wow. No, I like that a lot. Yeah. I mean, I've had to sort of so this last, I don't know, I mean, who knows what's happening with now when this is released, but it always hangs us up. But yeah, this last script I wrote, it is kind of, it made me sort of go back and reflect on my time when I was younger. And it was an idea I had before, and it was something that I've now I had the idea from then, and so I have like the sort of idea of what I was doing and everything, and then now I have the perspective of now looking back and getting some more hindsight. But it is kind of made me go through a lot of my other catalog and other ideas I've had, and I think I will spend some time kind of now going back through and working on these other ideas I have during this time and this. I don't know. So I mean, I've kind of been dealing with that myself of like, why am I sort of attaching to this sort of past feelings? And I don't know. Part of me thinks, I mean, I've always sort of been told people always said even when I was younger, thought I was older than what I am. And like, and they always treated me as older and everything. And now
you were older up until the point that you didn't agree with what they were saying. Yeah. You were old enough and mature enough for it up until you disagreed.
Yeah. And so, I mean, but I mean, even so, I mean, I think that now I'm sort of, I don't know, part of me is wondering if I, missed some things from being so sort of old about stuff, and not like, taking youth whenever I, had it, and so I kind of almost like, looking back at something and saying, oh, that, I don't know. I don't exactly know. I've been sort of wondering, why am I sort of doing that? I haven't really came to the conclusion just yet, but I really liked what you're saying about that they had merit, that this wasn't like, I think I see the need from why I was writing it of like, I just don't think I'm seeing a lot in film, certainly, I mean, you're writing in novels, but of treating young people with the respect that they deserve. And like the problems are actually real problems. And so I just felt like I wasn't seeing young people being written the way that I knew people my age. I still consider myself Gen Z, what that generation is, actually like, and what the actual conversations that they're having is. And so I don't know if you feel that way of like you're actually representing them in a more accurate way than what you see.
I don't know that I'd say more accurate. That's always that's a dangerous stick to wave. But this protagonist in the fantasy series that I want to write someday, she is probably the protagonist that is most influenced by some of my experiences. I mean, she's going to have gone through some stuff. I mean, I've been through some stuff, and it made me stronger, but it also broke me in some ways that I don't think the people around me always realized. And so with this character, I want her to be someone that someone else going through some stuff will look at and feel seen in a way that I didn't always feel seen when I was that age. Like if someone picks up my book, and they're going through some stuff and they read it and they connect with it and they feel like somebody gets them, that to me is that's a win. That's all that matters, is that someone connects with that and feels seen.
Yeah.
That's I don't write, so
You're creative in your own ways.
I don't know. When I think of like the books that I read, I guess like I invest in a character. And so my favorite books to read are books that are, at a minimum a trilogy. At a minimum. But I love.
So he's not going to read it until all of them are out. Jordan,
I'll read one-off books or whatever, but
he'll do it for me.
Yeah.
Not for anyone
like
else.
if I know that you're writing a book and it's going to have multiple books, but like I love those books. Is like I invest into the character, and so I want to see how like the character grows, and I want to read him over 7 books, and that's 15, 20 years. But like packed into 7 different books, and I like trilogies because usually it's a story and it peaks, and then you come down, and like there's always like a you have more time with the character, and when it's just a single book, even if it's 500 pages, you're doing 200 150 pages set up, 150 pages to conclude. You're only getting 300 pages, 200 pages of like time with this character. And so, I really connect to characters, and, I'm sure that there's a part of me that is, connecting to like what you guys were saying. And so, am I feeling seen, or like, am I seeing like what this character is, and do they represent what like I want, to represent? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever thought it that deeply, but listening to you guys talk, it's like, why do I read these stories that I read and I enjoy, and I don't know. I think just investing in the characters, and that's why I love those, books that are like 7 books long, and some, the first 3 books are great, the 4th and 5th are weird, and the 6th one is great again, and I don't care. I love it all.
And that's one of the reasons what you just said there is one of the reasons why I will never end. I mean, obviously, the fiction, sometimes the best ending is not what you get. Mm-hmm. I mean, The Hunger Games is a great example. Katniss and Peeta, spoiler alert. If you haven't read it by now, that's your own fault. But, they get married and they have children, but they are still so scarred from what they went through. But they're happy. They got that happy ending. And what you were talking about being the characters being what motivate you, is why I will never have an unhappy ending. When the series is said and done, there will be some version of a happy ending, because for most people, reading is an escape. Watching movies is an escape, and you don't want to set someone up to connect with a character for their journey to resonate and them to see themselves, especially if they're going through a hard thing, and get to the end and the character is more miserable than when they started. Because what does that say to somebody who's connected with that character? Like if you've connected with Katniss and it turns out she dies at the end. Well, then who's to say that your life's going to get any better?
Wow. I think that's
something that's fascinating, because I think and I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly. Privately, we've all talked about it. But Ribbon, with its original ending and everything, that there was another alternate ending that was shot for Ribbon, and it was even written differently than what it was. And I think some people can understand for what it's hinting at, but it was tough, the original ending, which I think thematically made the most sense for the film, and is still technically, I think, the ending that's hinted at. But it was so tough sort of seeing that with an audience, being that these people had watched these characters and did everything, that it made me, like the times I had to watch it with an audience, it brought me physical pain to sort of see, because I had never really seen it. It was written that way, and we shot it, and then it was until it kind of all came together, and then started seeing it with different audiences. At times, I remember when we were at Bare Bones, I had to leave the thing because people were having such a good time, and for me knowing what the ending was, that it was awful. It felt like I was being just mean to the audience in some sort of way. And so that's why it changed, even though a lot of people who watched it and watched the pub that's publicly out there, the festival version. And luckily Ribbon had a long festival run that I was able to test different versions of the movie. But that people who had saw the original and then see the new cut, they're like, oh, I like the old version better. But I don't know, because of what you're saying, because I felt responsible for people enjoying the film and watching the film and connecting with these characters, that I didn't want to do anything that was harmful. I don't know. I guess I should say what the original ending was. The original ending, that Michael's character died at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert. Eventually we'll release that original ending at some point.
Well, it doesn't show him dying. So I've always joked that I don't think he actually died. And I mean, I don't know.
It seemed at points sort of, it's a kind of a cheap way to end it or whatever. But to me, thematically, it made the most sense. But I had always viewed Ribbon as sort of a commentary on like my former self talking to my future self. And that was like, and how I viewed my future self would possibly be with the idea of Michael. And as I got closer to the Michael character and sort of further away from the Mackie character, I was like, well, I don't think that Michael should die or whatever. And I started, I don't know. So that was,
I think part of the props goes to the actors.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, Joseph really, Hannah and Joseph both did really good jobs, but like Joseph really does a good job at being like, oh, you know what? I kind of understand where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. And well,
because in the script I had when I read Michael, I always thought Michael came off as very rude and very like, I don't know. I just felt like that. I was like, people are going to hate Michael from just the words on the page. But then when Joseph brought his character to it and everything, he kind of like at times, like his point of view made too much sense. And it was like, oh, okay, well that's just, when you bring actors into it, it does, it adds a whole extra, layer to it. That's like, they bring their own thing to it. And I end up, loving, Joseph's performance. And then the ending stuck out weirder for that. But I don't know, just something I thought of with what you were saying that, I mean, you don't want to, torture the audience too much, especially whenever they care so deeply. And that was, I think, a very pivotal change in my college sort of things I made and art projects I made, is like, I kind of had a disdain towards the audience in many ways. And then through Ribbon and through all the different cuts of Ribbon and seeing it actually with audiences that are like showing up to see your work, to like your work, to give their, feelings and thoughts and, and submit to the film. It seemed, and they enjoyed it. And like we take their guard down over the course of the film. They're sitting there with their arms crossed by the beginning and then they're laughing, enjoying these characters. It seemed rude to, now you're vulnerable. Let me stab you in the heart. So I don't know, but that's why I connected with what you were saying.
Well, and go ahead, Alex.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really think about what you're saying, Jordan, is, I was sitting here and I was like, I really like that. But I was also like, I also enjoy a book that like, you meet this character and you get 100 pages in, you learn this character and you love them. And then they like, they get killed off. And then you meet like maybe the real, protagonist. And, there's a book series I think of, and I'm not going to name it just because like it does have a pretty big spoiler, but like, it has these characters and you invest in them and then like they're killed off and then you meet the real one. And then I love books that change perspective. So you're following this person and then the next chapter you're following this person. And then, it goes back and forth. And then you meet this person. You're like, oh, I love, and then they like kill off this person. But, throughout it all, you're following the main person. And, I got really invested and, the book finishes up. It has a beautiful ending. And then I guess like the author had written like, I don't know, a year later, just like 3 extra chapters of just like, here's a continuation. And he killed the person off. And I'm like, this is so, like, I got mad. Like, I was like, this is stupid. Like, you're going to, she survives all this. She does all this. she's like this amazing character. She lost friends and family, and she made it to the end, and she makes it to like the happy place, and she's like happy, and then you're just going to kill her off in like this 3-chapter extra that you wrote. Oh my God, I got angry. But I also think it shows that this is how much I was invested in this character, because like I got upset that he wrote it all. And so my head, I have my head canon. I'm like, these 3 chapters, they don't exist. It ends.
Not canon.
It is not canon. I don't care what he says. I will fight the author. It ends at that point, and this is just an alternate universe. This is one possibility. And so, I don't know. It is interesting that, I love that, Cade, you kind of changed the ending, and that, you want to end on this happy story. Cause like, it would be a little infuriating to get to the end and then it's just, and kill them off, and sad story. Like that would, that sucks. But if you write like that, feel free, but it's just, I'm just speaking my personal preference.
Well, and I will say sad things happen.
Yes.
Like my characters at the end of it, they are worse for the wear. They have their scars, as we talked about with trauma, but they will not have an ending where they are not at least somewhat happy. I can't do that. I mean, like you were talking about character death. I think every character that dies, it should be for a reason. You shouldn't just kill characters just for the shock factor. If you're going to name a character, if you're going to get your readers invested in the character, and you're going to kill off that character, there needs to be a reason that's better than just for shock, first of all. Second, for me, I as a writer, there's a little bit of myself in each character I write. My villains, they have traits of mine that I'm ashamed of. My heroes have some of the things that I wish I was, the things that I know I am. And so as a writer, I am just as invested in these stories as my readers are. And I don't know that I have it in me to put a part of myself into these characters, especially the hero, and to not give them at least somewhat of a happy ending because they've fought so hard to get there. And what does that say to me if I can't let this part of myself have a happy ending? If Katniss goes through the games and she dies, well, then what does that say to me about where my story is going? I like things to have happy endings because I want to believe at the end of this journey, every bad thing I've experienced will make the ending so much sweeter.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful analogy because, like you said, at the end of the games, Katniss, there's Peeta, through it all. At the end, you end on Katniss seeing Peeta, and it's like, yeah, she is fucked up, and she has all this trauma, but
she's happy.
She has, for her, the guy that is like her rock. So,
and she has children. That's something she never thought she could have. She's safe. Like that is the biggest thing, is that at the end of the day, after so many years of that struggle, she's safe. And I really resonated with Katniss. I have a little sister that I would volunteer for if I were in Katniss's position. So when I read those books, all I could think about was, what would I do if my little sister was in this? Like, what wouldn't I do to protect her? What wouldn't I do to get back to her? So Katniss really resonated with me as an older sister and as a protector and sort of a mother hen. And so I needed Katniss to be okay, because if Katniss could come out of all of that okay, then I can too. And I don't want to hurt the reader. I don't think I have it in me to hurt my readers.
Yeah.
On purpose with a bad ending. I'll hurt you in other ways, but I won't give you a bad ending.
That's the J.C. Ballard guarantee.
You'll be hurt, but not by the ending.
Well, do you have a question, Alex, or anything?
Jordan, something that I've thought about, and it's something that we always wanted you on, but then this happened, and it really made me think that this could be a really beautiful piece. Is that we now have an unfortunate
Yeah.
similar circumstance that has happened in our lives. We both lost our fathers. You know, my dad passed away this past March, and you know it was very sudden. And I think there's a relief in that. You know, your loss was, you know, a lot more extended relatively.
Well,
in some ways.
yes and no. My dad was diagnosed in October of 2015. Mm-hmm. And at the time when he was diagnosed, he had a good prognosis. I mean, they were very adamant with my siblings and I that he was going to make it. Mm-hmm. And there were setbacks. He got a massive abscess from the chemo, which set him back. And so they had to stop treatment, and then he had multiple procedures. And each time they went in to do a procedure, they would find that the tumor was larger than what they had planned. So it wasn't, we never went into it with this mindset that we were going to lose him. I mean, up until the surgery, the last surgery on April 4th, 2016, he left for the day. I got up and I hugged him goodbye, and he left, and I went back to bed thinking, okay, after the surgery, we're done. The cancer will be gone and we'll be done. So it was sudden that day when they brought us in and said that there was nothing they could do. Oh, wow. And the only extension for that really was that between April 4th, when they said, look, this is way worse than what we thought, it's reached the point where we're not sure he's going to get out of the hospital, to he passing on April 6th.
Oh, my God.
That was the only extended period of the suffering.
Oh, wow. See, I guess, you know, off of our conversations, I kind of thought it was like a more gradual thing. I didn't realize it was
hindsight. I'd say hindsight makes it that way. I mean, I noticed, my colon cancer, for those of you who don't know, is a very, very aggressive form of cancer. I mean, go get your colonoscopy at 45. That's when it's recommended. 10 years before, if you, like me, have family who's had it. Like, take it seriously, because it's so aggressive and it's so preventable if you take care of yourself. And because it's aggressive, you don't realize how quickly they're changing. Like, if you were to look at a photo of my dad from June of 2015 and April of 2016, you'd have a hard time telling that they were the same person, because he just declined so quickly. And at the time, because we didn't know what was going on, we didn't see the decline. So it felt more extended in the aftermath of looking back and thinking, oh, all these times, like all these months, has he really just been dying in front of me? So it felt more extended than it really was after the fact, but...
No, I stand by the thought and the fact that, you know, like, so my dad, he passed of a heart attack very suddenly. And, you know, I have a certain, you know, like, relief that, you know, like, it wasn't prolonged or anything. It wasn't like this long term. You know, my dad had always said, you know, his biggest fear would be like going out like my grandfather, who had Alzheimer's, and, you know, and I think it was, for him, it was more us watching him go down that decline, because that, you know, it drove my father to alcoholism, truly. And so I don't think he wanted that for us. And so, you know, but my dad, you know, by the end, he got sober. You know, he made mistakes, but he, you know, at the end of the day, he was a good dad. He grew up really well. It's just that when his parents started to go down, and I don't think he, you know, I think that was his biggest fear, and you know, I think he didn't want us to see like that. And so, you know, I have this you know, relief that, like, at the end of the day, you know, he went from, you know, like, he was with my mom, and I feel the worst for my mom, because my mom was there, like, through that. But, you know, he was, you know, they were driving to the hospital, and it was like, hey, you know, he went to urgent care, and urgent care was like, yeah, you know, like, we don't see anything they didn't see anything, but they recommended they go to the hospital. So they didn't think it was anything serious. My dad was just having like, some of the signs, but, nothing terribly serious. And urgent care is sitting there going, yeah, we don't see anything. We did a scan and nothing's there. We just recommended. So, my dad went out to the car, moved the car, got some stuff ready, moved some stuff around. They got in the car and they were driving. And then, he was just like, I don't feel very well. And he passed out. And then that's when he went. And it was just, very like, for him, he probably just thought it was anxiety. And so, I have a very big relief of just like, it was very quick. And, I've and for some people, there's a lot of pain or, it's longer. And, for him, it was quick. And it's just, the worst thing about it was my mom was driving him. Mm-hmm. And, that's what gets me more, is that, I feel so bad for my mom. And now, my mom's life just changed so drastically.
Sorry, go on.
No. And so I just, I wanted to, ask you, like, I still have, it's not easy to live with, your life completely changes in a day. And so I just, I wanted to talk to you and, how did you cope with it? Because I remember being in college, you would, notoriously we would make jokes about it. And, that was a very big thing. And, I always thought, if I ever lost a parent, I'd be able to joke about it a lot. But, I can do it a little bit. Like, Cade and I have, I've made some small jokes, but it's like nothing at all like you ever did. And like, if it goes, the jokes got really bad. And, I always thought I'd be able to be like that. And then, now it's happened and I'm like, I don't want people joking about it too much. Like, I think Cade has made like some slight jokes and, it's like, and Cade does it really well. Like Cade is a master at comedy, but they're never pushing an envelope. It's always just like a tap of a joke, and it's always like it's never the main focus. And if it was, I feel like I'd probably be like way more upset. And I'm like, I can't believe that. I'd be upset, and it's crazy that I'm affected so much by it. And, I never thought I would be. And so, I would love to hear, like for you, what your kind of story of, growing and moving on. Cause I'm still in, I'm 8 months down the road from that.
Well, I don't know what people have told you when it comes to losing a parent, but I may be dropping a harsh truth on you that you don't want to hear, but you won't. Mm-hmm. You won't ever move on from it. You will grow around the grief, but it will always, always be present. My dad passed away in 2016, so by the time this comes out, he'll have been gone almost 8 years. Yeah. And I don't know that I feel any better today about it than I did when it happened. Mm-hmm. But my family, we like to say that if you're not laughing, you're crying. And it's just that was my dad's approach to life. Mm-hmm. When bad things would happen, he'd make a joke because he hated crying. He wasn't the kind of dad that like, oh, you shouldn't cry. Crying is weak. It was that he couldn't stand to see the people around him cry because it meant that they were in pain. And so what he did with my siblings and I, when we were growing up and bad things would happen, he'd make us laugh. Mm-hmm. So we would remember that this is not the worst. It will pass. And so that's kind of the direction that my mom and I took with my siblings when we lost our dad. I was 17, as I said. My sister was 14 and my brother was 11. I was in the room when he passed. My siblings were not. So we had very different experiences, and we were also in very different stages of life. I was set to go to college. So I was in a very transitional stage of life at that point anyway. But it was hard going to college after losing my dad. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I really considered taking a gap year to be with my mom and to be with my siblings. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because I don't know where I'd be now if my life would be on the same track it is now. But, I will say that I did joke about it a lot, and some of us in this room were also guilty of joking about it a lot. But, I have a very tight circle of friends that I trust to make those kinds of jokes because they know the depth of my grief. I mean, my dad was my hero.
Yeah.
I was a total daddy's girl. Like, that man, I swore he hung the sun in the sky for his kids. Great father, he really was my hero. So losing him, it shook me so bad. And so it was hard at times. It was so hard to be away from my mom, especially that freshman year. And that's when you and I met. I mean,
yeah.
When you and I met, I was like 4 months after losing my dad into that relationship. And I was always so grateful that when I needed space, I was given space. And I remember, I don't know that you'll appreciate the story being told, but I remember we were playing Jackbox one day, and we were in the dorm room. It was me, you, and it was the group. Yeah. And you made a joke on Jackbox.
Yeah.
And we hadn't really been joking about it because everyone else knew that the anniversary of his passing, the first anniversary, was like the next week. Oh. And I had been really sensitive about it, and everybody else knew it, and you didn't. And that was a failure on our part. Well, not my part, but it was a failure on somebody's part to say something. And you made a joke about it. And I remember just freezing because it cut me so deep. And it wasn't that you had said it, because it was literally a joke I had probably made before. Mm-hmm. But it was just that moment of being rocked. And I remember that my roommate and Jeff got on to you pretty bad about it. He was not happy. And I remember stepping in because I didn't want you to feel bad.
Thanks for that.
Because it hurt me, but that was how I handled it. And I'm pretty sure I laughed about it afterwards, but it's just...
I remember there would be times where like a joke would happen and, maybe you would maybe cry a little and, you would just be like, hey guys, I just need like 5 minutes. Like, and then, we would go about it, and then 20, 30 minutes later, there's another joke on that, and we're all like, what in the world's going on?
It'd be me.
And then it would be you, and you're like, this is my way of saying it's okay. I'm okay. I'm making that joke. And, I think a lot of us, we kind of learn to let Jordan make the first joke. Mm-hmm. If Jordan says it's okay, then it's okay. And, we would run with it, and we'd have a good time. But, I think we learn to kind of let you have that, space to go first. And so I'm so sorry about that.
But I needed that. I needed people who understood that I was going through something and met me where I was willing to be at. I mean, you especially, I was surrounded by a great group of friends freshman year, but Alex especially, Alex has a big heart. I don't think anyone who's met you can disagree with the fact that you have a big heart.
Thanks.
And you were always super in tune. I think even before you knew that I had lost my dad, you were always super in tune with, okay, how is Jordan feeling today? Is she okay? And you let me set the pace, and you never, one time, but not on purpose, you never pushed me further than I was willing to go. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated that so much because I was at a point where everybody wanted to know how I was doing. I couldn't go home without getting peppered with questions about it. Mm-hmm. His buddies would text me, and everyone meant well.
Yeah.
But it just was so overwhelming to have to put on that face of, oh, I'm fine. I'm surviving. And I had this great group of people that gave me the space to not be okay. And they respected that. And I, like you said, I'd cry sometimes, and everyone would just be like, this is happening. We're just not going to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And then I'd make a joke 20 minutes later to tell everyone it was fine, and we'd go on about our day. But everyone always met me where I was at that day.
It's interesting. People asking how you're doing. That's it's such a hard answer because most of the time I'm fine.
And they don't really want to know the answer if you're not.
Yeah. And so I'm always like, but as soon as they ask and it's in reference to that, then it's like, okay, well, I was doing fine. And now you've kind of brought it up and you mean well, but also like it's, 3, 4, 5 months after the line. And now I may have, I think about him like almost every day, if not every day. But, there are times where I can go and do stuff. But like if there's something that reminds me of him, or I watch a show or a movie or something, a lot of stuff still reminds me. But, I might be able to go a day or, without really thinking about it. And a lot of the times now it's like, oh yeah, that, this was fun. And, there's some things I do that I'm like, this is for you. But it's those messages of like, how are you doing? And you're guilty of this just a few days ago where you're like, but you'd been there and it's like, you're like, I don't know how to go, I know it, there's not a good time to ask and it's never, a great question, but it's like, there is no other question. You can't ask someone how they're doing without asking how they're doing. And so it's such one of those interesting ones. And I'm always like, I'm good, but like now I'm not as good, but like, I am good, but I don't want you to think that like I'm perfect because I'm not. And so if I say I'm good, are you going to think that like I'm totally fine? Or are you going to be like, and so I don't want to give off that impression to people of like, oh yeah, I'm good.
Well, and that's why I confessed, I owned up to it that I hadn't reached out about your dad because we do share that unfortunate connection. And the reality here is that there's no right thing to say. Mm-hmm. And most of the things that you would think are the right thing to say just make it worse. Mm-hmm. Like, please don't tell me he's in a better place. Yeah. Please don't tell me God needed him. Don't. Mm-hmm. I've heard it all, and B, it doesn't make me feel better. And we shared that unfortunate connection, and I just didn't know. I didn't know how to reach out without making it about that shared connection. Yeah. And some people just need space, and I felt bad about it every time I'd go to text you, and I'd just be like, he doesn't need to hear from me right now. I wish I had. I wish I had now reached out sooner. I just didn't know how to do it.
At the time, I really wanted just, because when it happened, I wanted just, everyone to be like, I wanted everyone to know. I wanted everyone to be like, hey, this happened.
See, I wanted to be left alone.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I wanted to be left alone about 2, 3, 4 days after. But like when it immediately hit, and this is something I felt bad about, but I talked to a therapist. Therapy's great. And they were like, no,
go to therapy, kids.
Go to therapy. And they were like, no, this is what you wanted, this is what you needed. This thing happened. You did nothing wrong, but and so it was like those first few days, I wanted everything. And I think part of it was like, I wanted everyone to be aware of like this, life-altering event. And I also wanted people to know, like, hey, this happened to my dad, because my dad was like, pillar of the community almost type of thing. Like anyone who met him loved him and enjoyed him. And so, I never realized it, but I've always kind of like modeled my personality after that to just being like this person that, he goes into a room and he could walk in here and be like, you're a little fuck face or something, like you're a little dummy head or something. You wouldn't care. You'd laugh. And so, it's just been these,
you don't realize how much you're like them until they're gone.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the things you guys have said you like about me are things I got from him.
And, we mentioned earlier, part of the reason that I want to, I really enjoy this podcast is, and this is the thing that I would just say to anyone, is that like, I wish I had more recordings of my dad, of his voice, of just like listening to him. And, I'm like my plan is to eventually get my mom on here one day and, just so we can talk. And, I like to think of, there's a lot of those, stories and places that are like, they're all about like getting those voices. And I've always been a person of like, you need to get those stories before they're gone. And I just never thought that, I would need to do it to my family. And so, I would recommend to anyone, even if it's just like them talking for 30 seconds, or like, make sure you have a voicemail saved of someone, at least one voicemail of every person, where they say, okay, bye, I love you, because I'm very fortunate that I do have some of that stuff, but I didn't have it like that day or that next day. It kind of took my aunt finding, oh my God, I found this video, my cousin having found these voicemails. And also leave voicemails for your family. Make sure you say,
even if it's just love you, bye.
Yeah, even if it is just like, hey, I love you, bye. Call me back, love you, bye. That way, if you something does happen to you, they at least have something of you. And you never know, like, because those 3 seconds of just saying, I love you, bye, that can be, might help you, might make you cry, but it'll also help you sleep. And so, there's been a lot of stuff, and, I also had a lot of anger though. Cause I was in college, you were about to start college. And then I was very fortunate that my school was like, you do what you need to do. When you come back, you can do your finals and we can finish everything up. But the rest of the world just goes on. Mm-hmm. And, college wasn't going to wait for you and come August. It wasn't like finals week or something where they can say, hey, we can put a pause on your grade. It's just, this final grade. It's an entire semester starting for everyone. But, it's like, why can't the world just wait a month? I don't know if you experienced something like that.
Well, for me, it was a little different because I was, like you said, starting college. I was in high school. I was 2 weeks shy of senior prom. And I am so, so lucky that my graduation, my cap and gown, and my prom dress got delivered to our house a week before he passed. So he still got to see me in my prom dress and in my cap and gown. But for me in high school, when I came back, we were at the hospital for 3 days. And then I didn't have to go back to school until like the next Thursday. So it had been about a week by the time I finally went back to school that he'd been gone. And everyone treated me like I was fragile. Mm-hmm. And that, I hated it. I hated being treated like I was not strong enough to handle myself or set my own boundaries. And several teachers were like, if you don't want to do that assignment, don't do it. It's like, no, don't treat me that way. As far as you are concerned, I am the same as everybody else. That's
so interesting. See, and I don't know, maybe that's just because like the age you were at. Because if I would have had that, I would have been like, oh, absolutely. I
needed the stability.
Yeah, and I think and I think that just goes to show that
I think you're fun. I mean, you have a different personality.
Well,
Alex.
yeah,
that's also true. I'm very type A.
Because I never liked anyone. Like whenever people would ask, how, I've lost people. I've lost,
your grandmother.
My grandmother was most influential person in my life. And I just didn't ever like, whenever you ask you how you feel or whatever, I felt like they were like wanting me to be sad, or I felt like, I don't know. It was like I was some sort of just show for them or something, or I don't know. I felt I didn't like letting people, I guess, into that or whatever, and I felt like that was the case. And so I think that's something different. Like I didn't want to be a spectacle for them to see or anything like that. So that was always the case of like, I don't know. I would agree. Didn't want any special treatment, but I also didn't want people to, I don't know, see me sad, I guess. I don't know. That was.
Well, and I was also at that time the rock of our friend group. I mean, everyone had stuff going on our senior year, and sorry guys if you happen to catch this, but none of them had things going on like I had things going on. But for some of them, I was the most stable person in their circle. I was more stable than their family. And so for me, I have siblings. I'm very protective of my siblings. So I was in a position where I still had to take care of a lot of people. Thankfully, not to the degree that my mom did, my poor mother. But I had to be okay because there were other people depending on me to be okay. And if you're questioning whether I'm okay, I don't want your questioning of whether or not I'm strong enough to handle this to impact the fact that somebody else needs me to be strong enough to handle this.
And, I think, Cade, I just want to say that, like, when people hear of grandparents passing, I think some people are like, oh,
it's flippant. Yeah. They treat it that way. Yeah.
But for some people like yourself.
Yeah, I lived with her for first 20 years of my life. I mean, I have parents and but she was. I didn't have siblings. I was only child, but so I had my parents and I had my grandmother who was in the house for me. So my first 2 decades of my life, she also passed in 2016, and it was in the summer between freshman and sophomore year, and that also I think played a part in sort of the vulnerability I had there and everything. That. And it's different, yes, I agree. And that was always a thing that, it's not like the grandmother that you saw every once in a while who was away in a nursing home or whatever. It was someone who was actively in my house. In my case she was Cherokee. She was my, matrilineal line to my heritage and everything. So, I mean, there was a lot more there than a lot of people.
I would argue that she was almost like a second mom, in some cases. And so, but I think people are, expect you to move on from a grandparent faster than a parent or, anyone else. And so, I think whatever grief you went through is completely, fair and valid.
It's no less valid than our grief.
Yeah. I don't know if you needed to hear that, but if you did, it's
I appreciate that.
And that's for anyone, because some people live with their grandparents. And so,
some people's parents are not their, biological parents, like they have. Yeah.
I think anyone who loses someone, it's your journey with your grief. And, I grieved for some grandparents more than others. Some, I was expecting and I was ready for it, and it hurt less. And, I was ultimately fine. And then others I cried over. And I think it just depends on your personal relationship. You could see a grandparent once a year, but they could be like your best friend. Yeah, and that is completely valid as opposed to living
at the same
with someone.
time, I can't imagine what you guys went through, losing a parent, losing someone who you look up to, and in that sort of way.
Well, you went through it with your grandmother, Cade.
Well, yeah, yes. I mean, but like grandparents they die. That's what they're supposed to do.
Oh, God.
And I say that as someone who, I wasn't going to, they weren't going to outlive me. That's kind of the contract you have there. But I cannot accept, even though it's going to happen, that my parents are going to die. That is something
You're not supposed to lose them before you're 30.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that's something that I can't even fathom. And so I feel deeply for both of you of I can't even mentally prepare in any way for that, so.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think, for anyone, I think every person just has to be treated,
Grief is a spectrum.
Yeah. And I think everyone, some people need to be coddled and some people need to be treated like nothing is going on. And I don't know. I mean, I think you have to be aware that there's a spectrum and every person needs to be treated differently.
And every feeling you have towards it is valid. I mean, most days when it comes to my dad, I am more angry at him than I am sad. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm surprised from how everyone always talked about grief. I expected to be sad all the time. And I find myself angry a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's an emotion that I think people don't always, I don't want to say respect so much as understand. Mm-hmm. Because we tend to view the people in our lives who have passed on as untouchable. They're on a pedestal. No one will ever live up to this person. And that is true. There is no one that can replace my dad. But it doesn't change the fact that I am so fucking pissed all the time at the fact that he didn't go to the doctor sooner.
Yeah. Yep.
He had been sick for 6 months before he finally went to the doctor. And it's not fair to say that he'd still be here had he not gone, but it's also not fair to say that he wouldn't be. And that's something that I don't think people always realize, especially when it comes to losing a parent, is that sometimes your anger, losing anyone really, your anger at them can sometimes be the most overwhelming feeling.
Yeah. Well, normally this is where we would propose like but I feel like before we move on to our we need a quick palate cleanser before we
our water that we have.
Yeah, but before we ask you the final two questions, I think we just need a quick, because I hate ending, and this is just me in my general life. I hate ending on a sad note. I hate going to bed sad or angry, or just like ending anything.
Yeah, that got heavy.
Yeah, and
this is how our nights would go.
Yeah, this is true.
It would start out this way, and then you would get to the depths, and like the game's over, and now we're just sitting with our thoughts.
Or it'd be the other way. It would start out heavy, and then by the end, chaos.
Yeah. So it's one of the two. Yeah. But I love that we are, we're able to back then and even now sort of talk deeply and
pick up where we left off.
Yeah, picked up where we left off. Yeah.
All right, that's great. There we go. That's what I needed. Ain't on a laugh.
So yeah, I mean, we toward the end, we always ask for advice that you would give people. I think that I don't know how we want to, which topic I think writing would be a good one of people who are interested in writing, or what would your advice be to aspiring writers?
Ooh, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. I think that the biggest thing I can tell people is that every idea is a good idea. If you want to write, don't let anybody tell you it's not a good idea. You can do it, and any idea can be made a good idea. So if you care enough about it, it's worth writing.
Wow.
That was beautiful. So
I aim to please.
The last question that we always ask, and I like to say it's probably the hardest one to ask. Do you have any socials, and where can people follow you?
So I do have some socials. I'm on Facebook as JC Ballard. I am on
J.C. JC JAY.
Just JC, no periods. I'm on X. I want to call it Twitter so bad. It bothers me so bad. I'm on X and Instagram and TikTok as JC Ballard Writes, I think. God, I hope I got that right. But those are the big places. I'm most active on Instagram. So
most active on Instagram. Okay.
Do you have any TikTok or anything? You post any of your stuff?
I've got TikToks up there. I need to do more. I hate TikTok, guys.
It's a great way to advertise.
I love scrolling through it. I hate posting on it.
Yeah. Well, we'll tag all of your channels when we do, videos and things of this. So, yeah.
Yep. This will be posted in just a few short weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cade goes through and he'll clip some of the parts and he'll make TikToks and Instagrams. And so, I'm a big fan. I pestered Cade into getting us a TikTok, and I think it's just a good way for, people. So here's what I think you should do. I think you should read a chapter. Well, your book is kind of a little weirder when it comes to that, but you read a chapter.
Segment.
Mm-hmm. Segment. Yes. Thank you. You read a segment a week, and then you go, all right, guys, this is what we're doing. And then you go in. I think it'd be great.
That's not the first time I've heard that. I might actually have to do it now that two people have said it. Maybe I need to take it more seriously.
And if you need some extra motivation, the bottom half of the screen can be like Candy Crush or something, just to keep people.
Subway Surfers.
Well,
great. It was great having you on.
Great to be here.
We should have done this a long time ago, but
no hard feelings, no grudges.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thank you for being here, and we'll see everyone. Bye.